Uh, Ambassador Sekhri, the Prime Minister stopping over at Cyprus. This is not something trivial in nature. Our tension, the friction between India and Turkey at this point in time is at its apex, predominantly because of Turkey's unfettered support to Pakistan, and of course their stance towards India at the UNSC as well. The Prime Minister did not have to make this pit stop, and yet he did. What does this mean to you? What does this imply? And considering the fact that the Turkish government has had an axe to grind against Cyprus for decades now, this is perhaps a redefinition of the geopolitical strategy that the Prime Minister has enunciated towards the European Union in the past.
Absolutely, I do agree with you, and I agree with what Professor Madhav Nadapat said about the great significance of Prime Minister's stop in Cyprus. And you can see that I agree fully with the analysis about the role of Turkey. And Turkey has been absolutely a country that has disappointed us immensely and has supported a country that is known to be a supporter of terror. And the kind of anger that is there among the people of India throughout the country, not only at the governmental level, but everybody, people that don't want to visit Turkey, they don't want to, buy Turkish goods, they don't want Turkish companies to work in India. So it's been a general reaction of really anger and such distaste for Turkey anymore, that you cannot have a person wanting to be in the global committee of nations and then behaving like this, supporting a country like Pakistan that is only known as a world's hub of terror. It's been awful. And I think that the stopover in Cyprus has this very important message. I agree, but there are also, I think, two more reasons I would like to add why this stopover is very important. One is that Cyprus's geopolitical location in the Mediterranean. And I think that Cyprus will play and has declared that it wants to play a very big role in IMEC, in the India, Middle East, Europe corridor. And I think this is something very significant. India, as you know, that we've been attaching a lot of importance to IMEC. We've been working on it very hard. And I think that this is the time that, with the support of Cyprus, in fact, Cyprus has said, the president has said that they want, to be the first stop in Europe, in the EU, for India as we get into IMEC. So I think this is a very important point to follow up on. We do know that the president of Cyprus made a very special gesture and a warm gesture in receiving our Prime Minister, coming right to the airport, to the tarmac, to receive our Prime Minister. And that was a very special gesture, which was mentioned by our Prime Minister also in his tweet. And the third important reason I'd like to give is that Cyprus is an important member of the EU. And from January of next year, 2026, Cyprus is going to hold the presidency of the EU. And that is another very important reason. You do know that India is making a very special outreach to the EU now. And I think this is a very important part of the new geopolitics that you yourself have talked about and that Professor Madhav Nalapat talked about. And I think as part of the outreach to the EU, our Prime Minister's decision to stop in Cyprus and discuss in detail with the President of Cyprus what India and Cyprus can do together for the EU, for India-EU relations, and for carrying these forward. We do know about the interest, that serious interest that there is in having an India-EU FTA that is still being finalized, and so many other aspects of development that we're going to talk about with Cyprus, whether it is technology or trade or investment and security and defense. All these are very important issues that our Prime Minister is going to discuss with the President of Cyprus. So all in all, it's a very important stopover, critical stopover, very well planned, very well poised for the new geopolitics. And I think from there, going into the G7 meeting is going to be a very important step for our Prime Minister. As you know, the very fact that our Prime Minister Carney, telephoned our Prime Minister to invite him to participate in the G7 is a strong indication that a G7, a meeting of the biggest global economies, cannot be complete without India being there. It's a tribute to India's growing economy, to India's stability, to the steady rise of her economy, the fastest growing economy in the world, 6% and more every year. And every indication that this will go on. And, our prowess in defense, what we have shown after Operation Sindoor, this will be the first occasion first foreign trip of our Prime Minister. So certainly the issue of counterterrorism, the issue of India's reaction to terror, that every act of terror against India is going to be considered an act of war. I think this message is going to go across very well to Europe, to the president of Cyprus, and then later on to Croatia, and then certainly in the G7 and all the bilaterals that are going to be there. This question of terrorism and India's strong stance on terrorism, the new normal, is going to come across very clearly. So these are the important messages that our Prime Minister is conveying and is carrying with him as he stops over in Cyprus and then moves on to Canada for the G7 summit.
Absolutely right. Dr. Bhattacharya, how important can Cyprus be in terms of India's outreach and India's trade?